Are you afraid of ghosts? Well, if you are, then this is one place in the world that you need to stay away from at all costs. Welcome back, everyone. Here today we're going to be discussing the haunted old Changi Hospital in Singapore, which has been cited as one of the most haunted places in the entire country. You don't want to miss this one. So let's get into it. In today's video, we will be covering the history of this hospital, some of the scariest stories that have come out of here, and what makes this place possibly one of the most haunted locations on the planet. Before we begin, remember to hit that like button for more videos. Now, the old Changi Psychiatric Hospital is located in Changi, which is a small town found on the eastern end of Singapore, and the hospital itself is near to the former Changi prison camp, which was used by both the Japanese and British forces during World War II. The prison camp was said to be one of the worst places to be held in, with thousands upon thousands of people losing their lives while being held captive there. It was a brutal place, and many of those who did survive have gone on to claim that the spirits of those who didn't make it are still lingering around the area to this very day. And they may just have found a new home, too, as the hospital was built directly across from the prison camp. So these spirits might have nowhere else to go. But before we talk about these poor souls, let's first talk about the history of the hospital itself. Now, after the prison camp was finally shut down, this location was chosen to be the site of a brand new hospital. Plans were approved, and construction started almost immediately. But it wasn't long after they began building that workers started finding all kinds of strange things happening around them. At first, they tried to just ignore these occurrences, but they soon became so frequent and intense that they had no choice but to investigate. That's when they called in an expert. Now, the person they called in was said to be one of, if not the best paranormal investigators in all of Singapore, and his name was Joseph. He conducted numerous experiments in order to see if he could communicate with the spirits that appeared to be haunting the site. And after days of hard work, he finally succeeded. And once he got the spirits to communicate with him, he asked them simple questions like, "Can you tell me why you are here?" And the spirits replied, "We were tortured to death." After hearing this, Joseph knew that this land was built on top of the old prison camp, and he immediately told the workers to stop construction until further notice. Once word got out about what was happening, the government agreed with Joseph that they should halt construction and start digging up the land to find any evidence that it was in fact built on top of the old prison camp. After several days of searching, they eventually came across a mass grave with over 800 bodies buried inside of it. After they had recovered all of these bodies and given them proper burials, construction of the hospital finally resumed, and everything seemed to be going well. There were no strange occurrences or signs of paranormal activity. However, that peace would not last forever. You see, only 1 year after the hospital opened its doors, World War II broke out and the Japanese army invaded Singapore. Once again, this location became a prison camp, and countless men lost their lives while being held captive there. Once again, it was used as a place for torture and killings, and it gained a reputation for being one of the worst places in all of Singapore. And after the war ended, the hospital was once again forced to close its doors due to the sheer amount of paranormal activity that was happening. When they finally reopened it, they decided that it would be known as the Old Changi Hospital. They hoped that a fresh name would bring in a fresh start for the location, but they soon realized that this was far from the case. One of the most famous cases of hauntings happened right after it reopened. A nurse had just finished her shift and she was making her way home when suddenly she heard someone calling her name. She stopped and looked around, but she saw no one. Assuming it must have just been a trick of her mind, she continued on her way home. However, the voice started getting louder and she felt as though something was following her. She turned around to look once again, but there was still no one there. She ran as fast as she could, and eventually the voice stopped. Shaken but unharmed, she made her way home. From that day forward, she refused to ever set foot inside of the hospital again. Now, obviously, this isn't the only story to come out of here, and we're going to be talking about some of the other more recent ones right now. so the hospital has officially been closed since the 1990s. This is because the government of Singapore decided to move all of the patients to another location and turn this site into a museum that tells the history of the old Changi Hospital, as well as the former prison camp that was located on the grounds. However, the weird thing about this is that even though the hospital has been empty for decades now, there have still been plenty of reports of ghost sightings and other paranormal activity. People have reported seeing full apparitions of patients and staff members walking through the halls, as well as hearing screams and other noises coming from inside of the abandoned building. There are even reports of people taking photos and videos while touring the hospital, only to get home later and notice strange figures in the background of their pictures. One of the most famous ghost sightings at the hospital comes from a security guard who was working the night shift. One night, while he was doing his rounds, he claims to have seen a little girl in a Victorian nightgown walking down the hallway. He assumed that she was one of the workers who had stayed late, and he continued on his route. However, when he turned around to go back to the front desk, he noticed that the girl had disappeared. To this day, no one has been able to confirm or deny her existence. Some believe that she may have been a patient who died within the hospital walls, while others think that she may have been a spirit from the prison camp that just can't find peace. Another interesting occurrence happened when a group of friends decided to sneak into the hospital at night to try and see for themselves if the ghost stories were true. While they were inside, they started hearing footsteps above them on the second floor. Assuming that it was just some kind of animal, they ignored it and continued on. However, when they rounded the corner, they saw a pair of feet right in front of them. Startled, they turned around and ran as fast as they could to the exit. As they were running, they could hear the footsteps getting closer and closer, as if whatever was up there was trying to chase them down. Eventually, they made it outside without a single scratch on them. And when they looked back, they saw nothing. There are also plenty of stories from tourists who visit the hospital during the day that have had experiences of their own. Many of them report feeling uneasy while inside the building, as if they're being watched or judged for simply walking through the halls. Others claim that they have seen shadows moving in the corners of their eyes, but when they turn to look, there's nothing there. Some have even claimed that they have heard whispers and voices speaking to them directly, even though there's nobody else around. Now, the scariest part about all of this is that there have been multiple investigations done by paranormal experts, and they have all concluded that this place is truly haunted. They say that the spirits that linger around the hospital are mostly peaceful and don't mean any harm. However, some of them are quite angry and are looking for revenge against anyone who dares to step foot inside of the hospital. After hearing all of these stories, do you think that this place is actually haunted, or if it's all just a bunch of made-up BS? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, if you want to see more videos about haunted hospitals, I've got just the thing for you. Check out my video on Waverly Hills Sanatorium, which is widely considered to be the most haunted place in the entire United States. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I'll catch you next time.